Video 09 The Volkswagen emissions scandal that fooled the world. The Volkswagen emissions scandal that fooled the world. For years, Volkswagen told the world they had done the impossible. They had built a diesel engine that was powerful, fuel efficient, and clean. Regulators believed it. Consumers believed it. Even environmental groups were impressed. But it was all a lie. Hidden inside millions of Volkswagen vehicles was a piece of software designed to do one thing: cheat emissions tests. When the car detected it was being tested, it turned on pollution controls. The rest of the time, it pumped out up to 40 times the legal limit of toxic nitrogen oxides. This is the story of how one of the world's most trusted car companies built the biggest fraud in automotive history. Volkswagen means people's car in German. The company was founded in 1937 with the idea of building an affordable vehicle for ordinary German families. After World War II, the Volkswagen Beetle became one of the most iconic cars ever made. A symbol of practicality and reliability that sold over 21 million units worldwide. By the 2000s, Volkswagen had grown into one of the largest automakers on the planet. The company owned not just VW, but Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Lamborghini, and several other brands. Its headquarters in Wolfsburg, Germany was essentially a company town where Volkswagen was the economy, the culture, and the identity. But Volkswagen had a problem. The American market, the most profitable car market in the world, was slipping away from them. Japanese and Korean automakers were dominating, and Volkswagen's leadership had a plan to fight back. Clean diesel. The idea was simple. Diesel engines get better fuel economy than gasoline engines. If Volkswagen could make a diesel engine that also met America's strict emissions standards, they would have a car that appealed to both environmentalists and performance enthusiasts. It would be the ultimate selling point. There was just one problem. The engineering was nearly impossible. Making a diesel engine that was powerful, fuel efficient, and true to what happened next would become one of the most calculated acts of corporate deception in history. Rather than admit the technology was not ready, Volkswagen's engineers developed what regulators would later call a defeat device. It was not a physical device. It was software, code hidden inside the engine's electronic control unit that could detect when the car was being subjected to an emissions test. The software recognized the specific conditions of a test. The car on a dynamometer, the wheels spinning but the steering wheel not moving. The test cycle following a predictable pattern. When the software detected a test, it activated the car's full emissions controls. Nitrogen oxide output dropped to legal levels. The car passed with flying colors. But the moment the car was back on a real road, the software switched off the emissions controls. Performance went up, fuel economy went up, and pollution went up by a factor of 10, 20, sometimes 40 times the legal limit. The beauty of the cheat, from Volkswagen's perspective, was its invisibility. No regulator could see it. No mechanic could find it by opening the hood. It existed only as lines of code buried deep inside the engine management system. And nobody outside Volkswagen knew to look for it. This deception was not a one-time decision. It was implemented across multiple vehicle lines, multiple model years, and multiple brands within the Volkswagen Group. Between 2009 and 2015, approximately 11 million vehicles worldwide were fitted with this defeat device software. 11 million cars, all programmed to lie. The scheme might have continued indefinitely if not for a small group of researchers at West Virginia University. In 2013, a nonprofit organization called the International Council on Clean Transportation hired the university's Center for Alternative Fuels, Engines, and Emissions to conduct real-world emissions testing on diesel vehicles. The project was straightforward. drive diesel cars on actual roads and measure what comes out of the tailpipe. Then compare it to the results from official laboratory tests. The researchers selected two Volkswagen models, a Jetta and a Passat, along with a BMW X5 as a control vehicle. The BMW performed as expected. Its real-world emissions roughly matched its laboratory results. But the two Volkswagens told a completely different story. On the road, the Jetta was emitting nitrogen oxides at 15 to 35 times the legal limit. The Passat was 5 to 20 times over. The researchers were stunned. They checked their equipment. They ran the tests again. The results were the same every time. Something was very wrong with these cars. The findings were published in May 2014, and the report landed on the desks of the Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board. Both agencies began asking Volkswagen of technical explanations, software bugs, unexpected driving conditions, calibration issue. Recall in December 2014, claiming a software update would fix the elevated emissions. It did not. For over a year, Volkswagen lied directly to FedCarb, looked government scientists in the eye, and insisted there was no defeat device. They blamed everything but the truth. It was not until July 2015, when CARB threatened to withhold approval for Volkswagen's 2016 diesel models, that the company finally cracked. On September 3, 2015, during a meeting with CARB officials, Volkswagen admitted that its diesel vehicles contained software specifically designed to cheat emissions tests. When the news broke on September 18, 2015, the response was immediate and devastating. Volkswagen's stock price collapsed, losing a third of its value in 2 days. Approximately $30 billion in market capitalization evaporated. CEO Martin Winterkorn resigned within a week, claiming he was not aware of the cheating. This claim was met with widespread skepticism. Winterkorn had been known as a detail-obsessed executive who personally inspected vehicles and demanded to know every aspect of the company's engineering. The idea that a scheme affecting 11 million vehicles over 6 years happened without his knowledge strained credibility. The legal consequences were staggering. In the United States alone, Volkswagen agreed to pay more than $30 billion in fines, penalties, compensation, and vehicle buybacks. Globally, the total cost exceeded $33 billion, making it the most expensive corporate scandal in automotive history. Individual consequences followed. Several VW executives were indicted in the United States. Oliver Schmidt, a VW executive who had personally lied to regulators, was arrested at Miami Airport while on vacation and sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Engineer James Liang, who had worked on the defeat device software, received a 40-month sentence and a $200,000 fine. In Germany, Martin Winterkorn was charged with fraud, though his case moved slowly through the German legal system. Other executives faced charges in various countries around the world, but perhaps the most significant consequence was the human cost. Researchers estimated that the excess nitrogen oxide emissions from Volkswagen's cheating vehicles contributed to approximately 1,200 premature deaths in Europe alone. The pollution caused respiratory illness, cardiovascular disease, and environmental damage that cannot be undone with a check. The Volkswagen emissions scandal was not just a story about bad software. It was a story about a corporate culture where the pressure to deliver results crushed every ethical guardrail in its path. Volkswagen was run on fear. Former employees described a culture where challenging management was career suicide, where engineers who raised concerns were sidelined, and where results were expected regardless of whether they were achievable. The company's leadership set impossible targets and then looked the other way when those targets were met through impossible means. This is a pattern that appears again and again in corporate fraud. When the people at the top care only about outcomes and never about how those outcomes are achieved, fraud becomes not just possible but inevitable. Volkswagen's engineers did not wake up one day and decide to commit fraud. They were put in a position where fraud felt like the only option. The scandal also exposed a fundamental weakness in how we regulate complex technology. For years, emissions testing was conducted only in laboratories, under controlled conditions. Nobody drove the cars on real roads to see if the lab results matched reality. Volkswagen exploited this gap, and they were not the only ones. After dieselgate, investigations revealed that many automakers had real-world emissions significantly higher than their test results, though none had used such blatant cheating software. The regulations have since changed. Real-world driving emissions tests are now part of the European approval process. But the lesson remains. When regulators test only under conditions they control, they are trusting companies to behave the same way when nobody is watching. And as Volkswagen proved, that trust can be catastrophically misplaced. Volkswagen built its brand on trust and sold the world a lie for 6 years. 11 million vehicles, $33 billion in costs, 1,200 premature deaths, and at the center of it all, a few lines of code that nobody was supposed to find. If you want to see how another company used secret software to cheat, the story of Theranos and the blood testing machines that never actually worked is already on this channel. And coming next, we are looking at how one woman created a fake cryptocurrency and vanished with $4 billion. That story is coming soon. This is the Fraud Files. We are dedicated to exposing the biggest frauds, scams, and corporate scandals in history. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Video metadata. Title: The Volkswagen emissions scandal that fooled the world. Description: Volkswagen installed secret software in 11 million diesel vehicles to cheat emissions tests. When tested, the cars appeared clean. On real roads, they pumped out up to 40x the legal limit of toxic nitrogen oxides. When a small team of university researchers uncovered the truth, it triggered the biggest scandal in automotive history, costing VW over $33 billion and contributing to an estimated 1,200 premature deaths. This is the full story of Dieselgate. #Volkswagen, #Dieselgate, #The Fraud Files, #Emissions, #Corporate Scandal, #Fraud, #VW Scandal, #Documentary. Tags: Volkswagen, VW Scandal, Dieselgate, Volkswagen Emissions Scandal, Defeat Device, Clean Diesel Fraud, Volkswagen Cheating, Emissions Test Cheating, EPA Volkswagen, Martin Winterkorn, Oliver Schmidt, Corporate Fraud, The Fraud Files, Volkswagen Documentary, Diesel Emissions, Nitrogen Oxide, West Virginia University, Car Scandal, Automotive Fraud, Biggest Corporate Scandals.